Hi there, it's Michelle Patterson, and we are here with the Real Share Daily Huddle. And today is going to be an awesome show. I know I say that about every single show, but today I've got two of my dear friends who are also part of my wellness team family. They are who I go to when we have that WTF moment. They were the ones that got the phone call and had me really share with them, okay, what do you need? What's happening? And actually mute out here. And one of the things that I had commented on is that in going through this process, what we've learned is how to really manage our response when we have that WTF moment. And we need to have a wellness team family. I'm going to actually mute you over there, Rob, so that we hear some background noise. But I made this comment as people who learn to control their inner experience and response to their WTF moment will be able to determine the quality and overall joy coming into their lives. And you have heard from Dr. Keesha Ewers. She's been on a few times. She's somebody that I have reached out to. At one point, we were talking, I think, every single day. And she just was that shoulder that I can lean in on and really say, okay, let me not show up in ego, but let me truly show up and be transparent and say, okay, this is something that I need support with. This is what I need help with. And Rob Nelson, and you've also heard from Rob as well, but Rob has been on and he has gone through some major stuff in his life. They are close family friends of ours. They lost their child, Bailey, when she was 16 to suicide. And he has been my just light force on how we can take a really horrific situation and not only make sense of it, but also be able to help share with others that if they are too going through something as painful, as horrific, is how they can approach that situation. I've watched in the two of them, Deborah, his wife, who's also a dear friend of mine, really just navigate that experience and build their marriage. It's been, Rob, I think over 30 years that you and Deborah have been married. And I've watched the two of them come together as a united team in dealing with life and whatever it throws at them. So I thought it really would be an important conversation, especially when we. You're the only one I haven't muted, Keesha.
Sorry.
No. You know what? I think what's so nice about this is that nobody cares. In fact, it actually makes me feel more at home. So I'm gonna unmute Rob. We're just gonna let it go. And then we have Adam Sherry who's jumped on, and I want to say thank you, Adam. He helped out with my California Women's Conference, and he was part of my sponsorship team and has done some great stuff. And so he reached out saying, Michelle, I want to hear what you're up to. So Adam, thank you for listening in today. I really appreciate it. So with that, this question that I have is how, when we're dealing with death, when we're dealing with issues that are coming our way and we're dealing with life. And my feeling is that none of us get out of this world unscathed from challenges. However, what we can do is we get to determine how we want to show up for ourselves, for our family. And I really think that you, Keesha, for me, that's what I've learned from you is just how to be bold. And if you do need to have a tantrum and let it all out, it's okay. Nobody's going anywhere. We're still going to love on each other. But really just examining is how we can be kind to ourselves, how we can be kind to others, but just energetically show up in the best version of ourselves so that we can we can get through whatever experience we're going through. And I'll end it with this, and you guys have heard me talk about this before, and that is, I would not change this last year for anything. I mean, I wouldn't. For me, what I've learned, and now the knowledge that I know and the relationships that I have, I mean, I feel so held on to. I feel so loved. I feel so loved by myself. I just, I really want to say thank you to both of you for going on this journey with me and just being a friend, through the process. I've cried with both of you. And it's just been a beautiful experience. And I wanted to share with the audience is just some of the conversations we had and what we talked about to have that inner peace. So who would like to go first?
Hey, well, listen, I'll jump in just to tell you and to share with the listeners that a conversation that you and I have had before about, you got this news a year ago in April that they were so eloquent to tell you had 90 days left, and that's not a good day. That's not a good set of news. And what I described in my watching from the outside looking in is that you didn't make a pro-life decision of, oh, I'm gonna fight for my life. You made a pro-live decision, and that's exactly how things have unfolded a year plus later, is that you're living life. And like you said, I've heard you mention this before, you love yourself, and not in a way that's, egocentric, but you're allowing yourself, you allow you to love you, and you allow others to love you. And that's also a decision along the path. So it's really been dynamic and impactful to watch from my perspective.
Well, thank you. And go ahead, Keesha.
I would agree with that, Michelle. You've definitely said, okay, I hear what you're telling me, and now I'm going to go out and I'm going to see if there's some more information that I can use my own discernment about how my life is going to look. And that's just been so lovely to see you empower yourself. And with my patients, I say the same thing. Like, I am not the end all be all of information for you. I'm here to give you my piece of it. And then it's up to your discernment. Never give up your power to another person to tell them, right? to tell you how long you have to live and how you're supposed to do that life. And so I'm so proud of you, Michelle. And it's been lovely to watch you just take this and say, okay, I need to get educated, and I'm going to do it. And here's how I'm going to build my team, and here's how I'm going to work with them, and let's do this, right? You take it head on.
No, thank you for that. And I feel like in this journey, one of the things that I have really valued is the skill set of trusting my gut, trusting me for the first time. And I'm just celebrated 50, but for the first time ever, I don't question my gut response. It comes in a place, it's like right solid in my core. It's in my knowing. It's the same place. When I met Eric, I said to him, my family, I didn't say to him, played a little hard to get, but I knew right when I met him, it was like, okay, this is the person that I'm going to spend my life with. And that's been 25 years ago. And it came in that spot of just like, this is what I know, this is what I know to do. And Rob, I wanted to jump in and Keesha, I still go back to the experience that I had in San Juan Island when you put on a retreat, and it was a death retreat. And
conscious dying.
Yep. I mean, that's pretty.
Sounds better than a death retreat.
Yeah.
I was like, when she invited me, I thought, well, I know she likes me. Yeah. She likes me. And it was so awesome because you had me come in. I was able to spend it with your family. Your kids were there. And it just so happened, and we've talked about this on the show before, but Sophie, your family four-legged friend, passed away that weekend. And it was the most beautiful ceremony, burial that I watched this family and I experienced. I mean, I will forever have a place in my heart, for for you, your family, and just allowing me to be part of that experience. It was so beautiful. I mean, really beautiful.
Yeah, it's a powerful thing because we are all going to die, and as much as our culture wants to avoid that and dissociate from it in a myriad of different ways, it's going to happen, and we can do it either very suddenly and tragically, or we can do it in a way where we get ill and we die slower. But it's going to happen no matter what. And one of the things we don't do, I remember doing birthing classes and, making sure that I was practicing bringing another life into this world through me. And whenever I've tried to master any skill, I've practiced it, right? And we don't ever really think about this idea of separating our spirit from our body as a skill that needs to be mastered in our culture. And so conscious dying sounds like this very odd, oh, that sounds morbid. But in fact, it's just bringing it to the forefront and saying, oh, this is going to happen. And so when I am at the brink of leaving this world, am I going to have regret? Do I feel like I've done what I came here to do? Is that I started out, I wrote a book called Solving the Autoimmune Puzzle. And the way I started it was, my nightmare is meeting the person I was meant to become and having those two not match, right? That I was supposed to do certain things that I didn't do. And we have these adult developmental stages that we go through, but they're not mapped out in our cultural conversation very well. So people don't understand that we hit developmental states the way we do milestones as children. And, one of those is to really understand that the way that I talk about, I'm writing a book on healing trauma right now, and I have a chapter called We Are an Entitled People. And people usually think about entitlement as material, but the way that I think about it, because I have a lot of patients with autoimmune disease and cancer, is that we're so entitled because we wake up in the morning kind of believing that our body should work in a very specific way. We go to sleep at night not realizing that our body is not resting. It's our mind that's resting. Our body's heart is still beating. The lungs are still breathing. The liver is still working. Kidneys are still functioning. Like, the body has the most thankless job of anything on this planet. And we don't ever really move into a deep gratitude and appreciation for the work that it does for us. So conscious dying is really about conscious living. It's about being able to say, oh, this body I'm about to say goodbye to, let me actually get really present with it right now and realize everything that it's been doing for me in this lifetime. And the entitlement piece is, we sort of think, and I'm so sorry to hear, this story that you told, but we honestly believe that we're not supposed to bury our children, right? That children are supposed to outlive their parents, and we believe that our bodies are supposed to work in a specific way. And these are the things that we assume, but no one ever promised this to us. So when it does happen, when we do get sick, or we have a child that gets ill in some way, or lose one, God forbid, then it's going to cause suffering no matter what. But the other additional suffering is almost a betrayal of life, feeling like our bodies betrayed us, or life has betrayed us, or God has betrayed us. And that adds another level of suffering to it. And so what I do in these conscious dying retreats is to really start to come into a place of just being able to accept the fact that life has these challenges that are going to be given to us that we probably can't predict. And that we need to develop our skill set for being able to, in between them, really appreciate life for as it is, right? And to be able to regulate our nervous systems when we're not being presented with those challenges, and practice. Because then when we have the moment that we're going to have to go through a bunch of steps of grieving and healing, and if we're not stuck in this shouldn't have happened to me, then we can actually go through it. So hopefully that's what came out of that retreat that you were with us. And it was so interesting because I'd been planning this for my family for a long time. And then Sophie got ill. and died during that week. It was like she just said, oh, this is the family's gathering. This is the time for me to go. And it was for us to practice it, right? And then my dad has cancer and you had cancer. And so it was just this beautiful week of being able to really share really authentic emotions and feelings that a lot of people, I call it velveteen rabbit moments, right? Like they're really authentic. They're not talking about cars or trips or, anything that actually has not a ton of bearing on life, right? It was like really deep questions of life that were being talked about that week. And I just love that you got to participate with us.
I really do too. I mean, you look back and it's like, it's that time together, and for me was so valuable. And, it just really solidified our friendship of just doing life together. And I think what we're being called to do is to come together collectively and really share our genius. I love how passionate you are about the work that you do. It makes me want to be around individuals like yourself that are doing big things in the world. And starting with death. I mean, we talk about this is that, this is something that we're all going to face, death and taxes. And how ironic, I was diagnosed on April 15th. It was like, what?
And some people do get out of their taxes, but they're not getting out of death.
Which, by the way, a little caveat to that is I did get a tax notice that I owed a couple $1,000s, and I told the tax person I was talking to, I'm like, I was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer on tax day. Can I use that card? And I was telling her, I said, it was with Global Women Foundation. And I said, this is going to be, whether I keep this going or not, because right now putting money into this is not what I need to be doing. And it was a penalty on top of it. And so I get in the mail 0. They dropped it down to 0. And I thought, how awesome is that? That they do have a heart, those tax people.
So nice.
They absolutely do. But yeah, I think just to have the conversation around something that all of us are going to be facing. And so for me, what came up, and recently you guys had heard from me that I have lost my business partner on the Dr. Joe Dispenza workshop that we were doing, where we were polling 400 of the thought leaders together to see what's possible. And we had it all, set up and designed, and we were working on this. And so we met up in Mexico. So here he's 46 years old, no sign of any kind of illness or anything. And when we were talking, and we videotaped this and we're recording this, and he says to me, Michelle, no matter where we're at, because he believed, like I believe, is that the veil between this life and this next life are very, very, very thin. Yes. And he says, no matter where we're at, let's promise each other that we will support one another and that we will show up for one another. And he asked me to help him. And this is back in October. And he said, will you help me put my wellness team family together and pull these pieces together? And I said, absolutely. He was the first person that asked that of me. And so we went through and just really getting crystal clear on the relationships that he had and what he was setting up for his life, and really, really celebrating his life all out, and having the quality of relationships and the conversations. And so when we had his funeral, his wake, which was online because of COVID-19, his family, we talked about that. And he had shared with him that he had put that together. And I thought, how absolutely, it was beautiful, because here he was doing exactly what we had talked about. And that is, wherever we're at, we can help each other. And I went in on Monday for my most recent PET scan results, and the doctor called, and my family was all around, and the kids, and Dr. Greg asked me, he goes, Michelle, what do you think the results are? And I said, they're good. I said, they're good. I said, it's, I'm getting through this. And I, at that moment, understood what free will means and how we get to co-create whether we want to be on the planet, not on the planet, and how we want to show up. And for me, it went into a place of my gut, was that I absolutely not only want to be on the planet, but that my work right now, I'm needed on the planet to do the work that I need to do and to pull these pieces together like we're pulling together. And so then the doctor, he said, he said what I had said about the results. And Jacqueline, my daughter, responded, and she says, "Oh my gosh, Mom," she goes, "you were so confident and so matter of fact." And I said, that's this skill, that's this learning process that I came up with. And that is that gut that I was talking about, where you just know, it's inherently in you and you just know. And so I thought about you, Keesha, and I thought, oh my gosh, it's happening. So yeah. And just again, to experience, his passing, Coates's passing, as something that was, I really felt like, even when I was getting the PET scan, I said a prayer. I really felt his presence. And all this last week, these deals that I've been working on for the last decade and creating this media platform are all coming together. It's almost, I keep telling myself, I'm not going to say this is so weird, because it's not anymore. It's so right. It just makes so much sense of how these pieces are coming together. And yeah. So Rob, it looks like we lost Rob. But I did want to talk a little bit more about, how did you feel, Keesha, after creating that experience and that retreat? What was the feedback that you received from your family?
One of the things that we had done for many years, because I used to work a lot of years in hospice, was to just bring awareness to the fact that life is uncertain. Like, we don't know when our time is, we can't know that. And so every Thanksgiving I had a little practice where I did years working in the intensive care unit. And so I would say, things can be unpredictable. And so I want to know from every one of you, if you're ever in a coma, what do you want to hear for music? What do you want to be read? What's the thing you want me to read to you? What all those kinds of things. To my parents, like, how do you want to go out? Like, do you want to be buried? Do you want to be cremated? Like, just really knowing what people want.
You remember what you and I talked about?
Yes. Pigtails at the funeral.
Yes. I go, at my funeral, I want everyone to be wearing pigtails, and I want to play 70s music. And it was one of our vision
But
class.
that's the conversation that a lot of people don't have, right? So we already had this going, that part where every year we'd go back and I would ask the table at Thanksgiving, like, okay, so what's different? Is there anything new? Is there something different you would want from what you said before? And so with the Conscious Dying Retreat, we went deeper with it. And it was like I was saying, how entitled people are around their bodies, where they wake up and they just expect their eyes are going to work, their ears are going to work, their nose, their mouth, their legs, their arms, and that they get really angry and they want to dictate to the body and just say it's supposed to do this, and then get upset with it when it doesn't, right? And so, one of the practices that I try and help people really drop into is, I don't know, pick a part of your body, like the third toe on your left foot, right? Have you ever really contemplated the job that it does? Right? Have you ever thought about what would happen if I didn't have that toe, that my gait would be unstable, my balance would be different, all of it would be different, right? And have you ever really appreciated this third toe on your left foot, or your right earlobe, or the fact that you can go like this, right? In a opposable thumb situation. And so it's bringing it into real conscious living, where you're mindful of the blessing that every breath is. No matter what the challenges are that you're faced with, that every breath is a blessing, and that, you someday are going to say goodbye to this body. And so instead of haranguing it for not doing what you want it to do, how about giving it this immense gratitude and love? How about loving yourself and loving this car that your soul gets to drive around, and being deeply appreciative of it. So what came out of that was my family really being in that space with themselves of, oh, the blessing of the moment, the blessing of this breath, and not future tripping, which can bring you into a lot of anxiety, or running around in the past, which can bring some depression, or thinking about the things in the present that you wish were different than they are right now. And instead, just real appreciation for what life does bring to you and offers you. And it brings a whole different way that you breathe into your body, which then, of course, has a whole different nervous system response, which then, of course, creates health. As long as you're in this place of, it's not right, I'm not content, things need to be different, you're resentful, you feel betrayed, you're angry, you're creating a whole different set of biochemicals that your cells are having to bathe in. And so I'm always saying, bathe them in love, bathe them in gratitude, right? For what they're doing. Do you even realize what they're doing? And make sure that you bring your realization to that so that you quit worrying about what isn't the way you want it to be, right? And then you're living very presently and very mindfully. And then lo and behold, the universe can meet you on that level, right?
Do you think that one of the reasons why, going back to your initial comment, that people don't talk about death is that they feel like if they talk about it, that means that it's going to be true? I'm just going back to that.
I do think that, and it is going to be true. So it doesn't matter if you talk about it or not, you are going to die. And so you may as well happen. I know. You may as well get so that you can talk about it in a way that has the understanding that everything in life is impermanent. Like I always say, no matter where my eyes fall as I go around, wherever I'm sitting, doesn't matter where I'm sitting, but in particular right now in my dining room, I can see my kitchen, I can see outside. Everything that my gaze lands on is impermanent. It will all pass. There's just nothing in life, on the planet, in the universe, that is going to be permanent. It's all impermanent. And so if you can drop yourself into the flow of the natural order of life, which is that all is impermanent, then you don't try to crave and clutch and grasp at making things permanent. Then you don't suffer so much, right? Then you can be in the flow of life and have the natural law of life supporting you instead of you trying to push against it. I always tell people, if you get in a fight with God, you're going to lose. Like, that's not happening.
Wonder, is that something where they're like, exactly, it's like you're trying to control so hard the situation, you're gonna lose.
You're gonna lose. And that, there's a very typical expression of that, of a monkey that's got their fist in a jar. They clutch something they want in that jar, and then they can't get the fist out. But if they just let go, then they can get their hand out of the jar, right? And it's that clutching, craving, grasping, wanting it so bad that then you can't get yourself out of your own entrapment, right? That happens.
I remember you telling me that. You gave me that example when we were talking.
Yeah.
Over many, many hours of watching the sunset. San Juan Island, it was just absolutely the most breathtaking views I've ever seen from your home.
Yeah.
And so thank you so much for welcoming me into your home. And I remember you giving me that, and I could totally see like this monkey, and think about it. How just crazy that is. We're looking at it going, just let go.
Just let go. I know.
I say it's like, and my girlfriend has this printed on her arm and a tattoo, but let go, let God.
Yes.
And I think it's so beautiful because I think a lot of that for me in this journey was not being angry at my body, not being angry at the situation, but actually really being joyful. I'm so appreciative of my mind, body, soul, spirit saying, at the age of 50, it's like, okay, we're going to do this together. We're all going to get on the same page together. We're going to create this internal ecosystem, your Patterson playground, and we're going to make it joyful. There's no longer a need to have the struggle. There's no longer, I was not happy. I was not enjoying life. I was thinking that I was, and I was constantly, it's like, okay, next, and building these bigger, grander, events and projects. But there was always that bit of me that just wasn't feeling complete. I wasn't feeling resolved. I didn't feel like I had really gotten to where I wanted to go. And I think a lot of it was because I had not taken the time to really get clear with myself and get quiet. Is what is it that I want to have happen? And once I started doing that, all of a sudden it got crystal clear as to why I'm on the planet and what my purpose is. And everything started just to like fall into place. And lo and behold, I started healing. Cancer stopped growing. But this feeling of just loving myself and being okay with whatever was happening. Feels so good.
It's really important, and I think, again, it's not something that our culture supports, that way of being, right? It's always striving, wanting more, going faster, building. And if, in Wall Street, the saying is that if the company's not growing, then it's deteriorating, right? There's no such thing as standing still. And it's that way in the law of physics too. But when you think about it, that's not actually true when it comes to the way that you spend your time. You don't always have to be in motion, right? And so you get to have some time where you sit still and just be. And I think that's one of the blessings of COVID actually is to really help people reevaluate. So not everybody had to get cancer to get the lesson that you had now, right? We're globally having to reassess and say, oh, this way that I had my life arranged that now is no longer this way. Interesting. Let me think about this. And, I think a lot of the protests and the riots that are happening right now are so important. And I think they're only happening because people actually have a beat in between breaths to pay attention to what's going on and be able to respond to it. Where when we were in our frenetic little hamster wheel, it didn't really matter what the news cycle was saying. Everybody just was so frenetically trying to get everything done in their overscheduled, over busy lives that there wasn't much of a response as a citizenship to things that were happening, and now it's like you can think of 2020 as the great pause, right? There's this big pause where everyone can take this big deep inhale, and some things are ending that needed to end, and that makes room for a new beginning, So it's a really interesting time that we live in. But I used to think that cancer served that purpose. Like when I got breast cancer, it served that purpose. You're saying those words right now that cancer did that for you, of a reevaluation, really seeing, is this making me happy? Always having a million things on my calendar, like, no, right?
And always feeling like you're on this hamster wheel.
Yeah.
It's like, go, 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 go. And, one of the things that I just heard from Elon Musk when he was doing Joe Rogan's interview, and it's just the recent one, just a few weeks ago. But one of the things that Elon Musk said was that he was giving away, not giving away, but he was selling off a lot of the stuff that he had and the houses that he had. And he said, I just don't want to spend time and energy on something that isn't filling me up, isn't creating that passion. And I thought that, to me, it really resonated with me, because for me, it was like, there's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of stuff out there. And when you take pause and you get quiet, it became very clear as to how I could respond, to my situation, how I could be of service, and really show up, and it made a lot of sense. And for me, it was like, I don't want to spend time on these particular areas. And so I literally sat down and went through, and it's, what's not bringing me 100% joy. I was told that in order to heal and get through this, I had to really manage my internal ecosystem, my response, and not have it be where I got upset and not have, I really had to put it out there and just not control, my situation, and know that I can't, nobody can,
Right.
but I can control my response and how I show up for myself. And so I put down, and a lot of the stuff for me, I don't get a lot of fulfillment off of cooking. You and I have talked about that. And I love building companies and building brands, and especially, and now I'm at the place where, I have a no asshole policy. It's, I don't work with you if you don't fall into the category of being a conscious company and showing up, as a, really this from a public service standpoint of seeing how your genius can really fill in the spokes of the wheel. But it's so freeing because I can decide on who I spend time with and who I choose to do life with. And also myself being that bully, at times for myself. And it was like, no, you don't get to not be kind, to me, and have that monkey chatter, and really recognizing where that's coming from, because I don't have to own it. I absolutely can get quiet and really, really look at, okay, where is that coming from, and why is it showing up? And
we should talk about that, because that was one of the things when we met that I was saying to you is, like, you have to forgive yourself for places that you've done things that you feel out of integrity about. And it's about being able to go back to that version of yourself who wasn't as wise as you are today, right? And so the wiser part tends to look backward at the one that screwed up somewhere, and we all have, and say, why was I so stupid? Why did I do that? How come I wasn't more conscious, and that's very judgmental, and it's bullying. It's actually bullying you, right? And to be able to go back and say, oh, that 21-year-old version of myself didn't have the kind of information and wisdom that the 55-year-old does, or the 50-year-old version of myself didn't have the wisdom that the 55-year-old does. And then it kind of gets you excited to age, because then you can go, wow, when I'm 80, I'll be looking back at this 55-year-old version of me and go, oh, sweetie, you just didn't have enough wisdom yet, So it's very cool, because quantum physics tells us that the time-space continuum is quite different than the way we try to make it, which is linear time. There was 5 minutes ago, and then there's 5 minutes from now, and it doesn't actually work that way. Like, our lives are you could think of it as one capsule of time, and you have available to you your future self and your past self. And those guys can all get together and communicate with each other. And you get to go back and forgive the younger, less wise version that didn't have as many skills. And then that creates a more resilient future self for you. That one's a more forgiving, kinder, more self-compassionate version, right? And so the more time you invest in going to your younger self and really repairing those ruptures and those wounds, the more resilient and badass your older self is becoming.
it's so exciting. I love that you brought that up too, because we have a choice. We could either live in the space of the past and play those same programs over and over. We can live in the future and be, I want this, and show up in lack and without, or we can show up in this present moment right now, today. And I'd shared this with you, is once I started really, really creating space for me to show up in the present moment, the pain went away. I didn't have the same back pain. I didn't have any of those issues. And I was just really present to what I was creating and co-creating, right now. And it was like it's been a habit that I've been building, so much so, like right now, I'm like, gosh, it's been weeks since, I've had this bullying to self, because I'm catching it right away, and because I'm living so presently in this present moment.
Good job. I'm so happy to hear that.
Like, what happens when you find yourself going back to like an old pattern? What goes through your thought process?
Well, the way that you can think about it is a pattern. If you think about it as an actual structure, so like the pattern in our fabric that we're wearing right now, or the pattern of the chair that you're sitting in, or the pattern that I have, right? It's molecules that are vibrating together. And so the denser the molecular vibration, the more heavy the mass is that we're seeing, right? The higher the vibration, the lighter it is. So when you go back and you see a pattern that's bringing heaviness to you, you can feel it in your gut, like a heavy gut or a closed off constricted heart, or jaw tension, or shoulders that are slumping forward and, protecting the heart, neck pain, like back pain. All of these things are molecules that are vibrating at a very dense level. And you can think about that as whatever's in your mind is crystallizing in your body. So whatever thought vibrational pattern you're having is literally creating a pattern in your felt world. And so if you notice that you're having any of those feelings in your body that I was just describing, it's not light, it's not joyful, it's not open and expansive. It's got these other things instead that are dense and heavy. Then you can just take your witness mind, your awareness mind, and just go in and observe, oh, what's the thought that I'm having right now? What's happening? I'm feeling abandoned, or I'm feeling rejected, or I'm feeling not seen, or not chosen, or not, like, whatever it is, right? I'm feeling betrayed, that are not safe. Then that's going to create these dense molecular vibrations that are going to create density inside your body, so you can actually shift it. It's up to you. You get to do that. And the way that I work with my patients, and I was just working with my daughter on a walk with us the other day, I looked over at her and I could just see, I can see this now in people, and I could see this dense vibrational pattern around her. You could think of it as like the aura, right? And I could see the color of it. And I said, oh, baby, what is happening in that mind right now?
Well, it's scientifically proven. I think
it is
fairy talk, and metaphysics will show you.
No, this is, exactly. Brilliant photographer picks it up, right? Mm-hmm. So I said, what's going on with you right now? And she goes, oh, you always pick this up in me. She goes, yes, I'm spiraling right now. I have a really good friend that's mad at me, hasn't reached out to me. I don't know what's going on. She won't talk to me. So she was having this emotional turmoil and suffering, and it was showing up in her body. And so what I did, and anyone can do this, where I just said, okay, well, that's so sad, right? That feels so sad when a friend does that. And when you can't understand it, and it makes grief happen, right? And so there's that. I said, go ahead and acknowledge that and feel it. And then, so if you try to just skip over the top of that, then it'll get stuck in your body. You've got to acknowledge it, like, oh, I feel sad. This is a really sad moment. And then I said, come up with a moment in your life where you had joy. And a lot of times for women, it's like the birth of a child, or for her, it was Christmases and birthdays. And so I said, okay, choose one of those, right? And my little 22-year-old. So she chose a Christmas, and I said, where do you feel that joy in your body? And she told me, and then I said, and what does it feel like? And she said, it's light, it's expansive, right? And so I said, okay, so now bring back the feeling that you have around your friend. And she went back into it. You could just see, like, her whole body's posture changed.
Well, we had to celebrate a birthday yesterday too.
She did. I said, okay, go back to the Christmas. And then she went back, and I said, see how it's under your control? Like, you actually get to choose what's up here, right? You get to go back to that little girl that feels rejected, and you get to pick her up, bring her to your Christmas, and say, I've got you. I'm with you, and I'm not leaving you, and you're awesome, right? And we're going to have fun together. Let's rock this Christmas tree, right? And so she was like, wow, that's so easy, Mom. That was so easy to do. I feel so much better. And that is really that simple, right? So that's how I do it.
I love that exercise. I think everybody can do that. I mean, that's beautiful.
Everyone can. Yep.
Everyone can do that. In fact, so I don't know if you've heard the show, but Colin, your son, was on, and I was talking to him. I said, so how does it feel? Like, your mom is this rock star mom who has just some great edutainment, educational pieces that we all can take and do that are super simple. It's at the disposal of any of us to be able to do, and it's so easy, but it makes you feel so good. Makes you feel so good. So he was glowing when he was talking about you.
Oh, so
yeah, my mom. Yeah, he was really super calm. I mean, at one point, I think there was just like this pause in our conversation, and we were like, we love her.
Oh, that's so sweet. Thank you.
It was really cool. And I told him, I go, this is the first, son, mom, where I've interviewed both. And he just was amazing on the show. I mean, he just did such a good job. Really good job.
He's a remarkable young man. And he and I have been on his podcast together. And then it's just so much fun. It's fun when your kids grow up and they're wise beings, right?
It's fun. I think what I am also learning in being a mom too is allowing the space for my kids to do it on their schedule, their time. It's not mom's schedule. It's not, what I want. And it's hard. I mean, this mama bear stuff is not the easiest.
No.
In the world. It's hard. It's really
I know.
hard.
I know. My daughter this morning, like you said, it was her birthday yesterday. It was her 23rd birthday. And our bodies, in our genetics and my family line, don't do so well with, our genetics don't metabolize caffeine very well. They don't like alcohol, like not at all. Well, she did some drinking yesterday and she drank some coffee, and she woke up this morning and she goes, oh, I have acne. And she hasn't had acne ever since she's been quarantined with me because I feed her the stuff I fed you. And she says, oh, I know exactly where this came from. And she goes, Mom, you were so good with me yesterday. You didn't even say anything. And I said, I know, because I've already told it to you. You have to now practice, right? It's the biggest job of a parent, I think, is to plant the seed and then get out of the way and let it happen, right? The biggest teaching she could have had was to look in the mirror this morning and own it for herself, rather than me saying, you probably shouldn't drink that, honey. You're going to have acne tomorrow.
Especially, I mean, your mom saying this.
I know, on your birthday. Can you imagine?
It's so hard. It's so hard as the mom to not say something when you see the train wreck happening.
Yes, exactly.
Wow. But it's not. Someone said this to me too. It's you birth them, you've given them life. You've held on to them, you've protected them, and now it's their time to fly.
Yeah. They have to do it. You can't fly for them.
And sometimes the best opportunity is for them to do it, themselves. It looks like Rob is jumping back in. This is definitely, Rob, you'll be my first one that has actually left the podcast and then came back.
Hey, I've got great cause though. I'm visiting my mom. The first time I've seen my mom since there's been lockdown, since March 11th.
Wow.
So she's at the home that she lives at. It's a senior living center, and they have literally had her in her room for 2 months, and they bring her food and everything, but just zero outside contact. So it's the first time that I've had a chance to give me 30 minutes. Isn't that crazy?
Well, I'm so thankful. And there's nothing that you could say other than I'm visiting my mom, that all of us.
Everyone's like, oh, good.
So can you start the whole conversation over? What I missed.
I would love to go ahead and just loop it back over, because I and Eric have been, like I said, dear friends with your family, and I've learned so much from you. And I'd love for you just to share, we were talking about this conscious dying,
Yeah.
and I think, the tragedy, and we were talking about just being parents and what you went through. And even as early as today, Rob, when you and I were talking, um, you just talked to me about Haley and how her life, mattered, and what you and Deborah have done. And it just made me, it it really, really, really just made me know that we're all on this path and this journey together. And
Yeah.
I'd love to share with our community, just the things that we talked about this morning, and what was coming up for you.
Yeah. Well, and I had so many thoughts, and just to where I jumped off the call, but I mean, Keesha, you're 100% mortality. My pastor says mortality runs at 100%, and so you're right. It's not anything that anyone's going to evade, and certainly dying graciously. There's it's something to think about, and then in dealing with death, like my wife Deborah and I have had to. It is graphic and traumatic and tragic, but we do have the choice. And this is a conversation that Michelle and I had earlier in the day. Was you have the choice of one life was destroyed, and as I describe it, Satan tricked our daughter into thinking that suicide was a good decision, and it can then evolve to where it destroys not just her life, but the lives of all those that are in our family, my son, my wife, myself. And so the decision that we made was that, and this was, it again, very graphic, but at her bedside when she had just passed, and my wife turned to me and she said, "I want Haley's life to matter." And so for us, the choice that my son has made, that my wife has made, and that I have made, is that a way that we can have her life matter is for us to rise out of tragedy, rise out of the ashes of tragedy, and have things and events and moments and inspirations and influence on other people where they can see that there's something that, something good that follows bad, that there is life after tragedy. So in that vein, we've pressed forward, and like I shared with you, Michelle, you mentioned you've been married for 25 years, and that's just such a high five moment. I love hearing about those kinds of stories. And Deborah and I, somehow, some way, she's put up with me for 30 years, and there's a success story behind that, especially after losing Haley, and knowing how losing a child just implodes families. But there's just good that can come out of these horrific things. And so I feel that's a way that we have life matter and have Haley's life have an impact, is when we continue to do things. And just like the event that I shared with you, Keesha, I have a background in cycling, and I've done some just crazy cycling events. And I'm right in the middle of another where we're cycling. I'm cycling 3,000 miles, finishing that up here in the month of June. And for the very purpose of drawing awareness, I'm calling out 3,000 owners of timeshares to donate 3,000 weeks of vacation to be awarded to 3,000 first responder families. So it's the 3K for 3K for 3K. And it's, my wife thinks I'm nutty, but I look at it and comes back to that same thing. If I can do something as insignificant as pedal a bike, but there is good that comes out of that in the context of these first responders that have been on the front lines. And like every military frontline person, they do have R&R following their service. And they're in need of it. They are in need after being in the ERs, in the surgery rooms, and the list goes on of where we see first responders. But they're going to need to come up for air with their families and just go, "Oh, what a 4 months. And I survived it," and have their whole storytelling of how they survived tragedy and are moving forward in a positive way with life, despite all the chaos and all the unpredictability and all the death, unfortunately. So I'm on the 3K for 3K campaign right now, and 1,800 miles into the campaign, 1,200 to go,
Wow.
and calling people out. You got a timeshare, probably not going to use it. Donate it for a great cause.
That's so great.
Isn't that awesome? I know.
Yeah.
I'm like, Rob. I mean, Rob could tell me we've done, where we had a show. They had me on. We co-hosted a show at Angel Stadium for a couple years, and they've done California Women's Conference. And so he calls. He's like, "All right, I got a project. This is what we're doing." You can tell me.
Look at this. There's my mom.
Oh,
Wave, everybody.
how awesome.
So there you have it.
Beautiful. I bet she's so happy. So she hasn't seen you since, because Rob, you turned 60. Since you turned 60.
Yeah, 30 twice baked. And so yeah, we haven't seen each other since March 11th, and so I'm thinking there's a smile underneath that mask. I don't know. Oh yeah, she pulled it down. She's smiling.
She's smiling. You're good. Well, excellent. So Rob, we're going to go ahead and we'll post how individuals can be a part of the 3K for 3K, and
Beautiful.
also, be able to reach out to Dr. Keesha. And I want to just highlight is just some of the takeaways that we've had through this conversation, because there's been so many. And I want to say thank you, because we started off talking about people who can learn to control their response, determine the quality of their life.
Right.
And that's really what we've been talking about. You can choose to show up in the struggle and fear and regret and feel like life is happening to you, or you can choose to show up in love and vibrate at a higher level frequency and collaborate on beautiful projects,
and know that life is happening for you, not against you.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. Anything else you guys want to add to that?
I just want to add, and I love that comment, because it is, Keesha, it is who Michelle is that I have yet to see her pull the victim card of, this is what's happening to me. Life's unfair. And in sharp contrast to that, Michelle is her battle cry is life is fair. And thank God I got cancer, because look at how it's morphed me into a much more beautiful life and a much more beautiful experience and living life. I mean, it's just a great testimony to watch unfold. So,
well, and I want to say thank you, definitely to you and Deborah and to Keesha and your family. I mean, your entire family. It's the quality of the relationships and the conversations that I'm having are so awesome. I mean, that's why for me, it was, I'll cut out everything else. But to have this podcast and to have the real share and to just show up in love and to hold on to each other and celebrate, all that we're grateful for. I look at, I'm so blessed because I get to do life with you guys, and it's pretty awesome. And then being able to share it with others and let other people know they don't have to settle for, these conversations or anything but an exceptional life that they choose to live all out. So, well, we are going to dance it. So we'll see what Connor picked for music, and we dance it away so we can dance with your mom.
There we go. Dance it out.